So, last week I talked about the opening of the Elizabeth line, and a bit about its history. But there's one thing I didn't talk about much, and that thing is the stations themselves. Or should that be the stations themselves? Anyway, the point is that the stations on the core section of the Elizabeth line all have some references to their local area, and I'm not just talking about the name signs. Some of these references are obvious, and some are more subtle. And I have to admit to the sneaking suspicion that some of the references are more a happy coincidence than something that was intended from the start. You can decide for yourself. So, let's take a look. Starting at Paddington, the station was designed to echo the Great Western Railway station next door. So the station is heavily lit by natural light and incorporates a lot of brick and bronze for a subtle Victorian architecture feel. I guess that makes it steampunk, maybe? The canopy also has clouds etched into it, which are a little bit hard to make out in this shot because it is cloudy. We'll skip past Bond Street for now because it's not open yet. Incidentally, I had a few irate but bizarre comments on my previous video arguing that because Bond Street isn't open, and it's not yet possible to go direct from Reading to Shenfield, the Elizabeth line is not actually open. Which raises some questions as to how I'm filming this. Tottenham Court Road is in the heart of the West End. The patterns on the walls form a map of the local area. We're also in Theatreland, and these lighting drums evoke stage lights. The St Giles Circus entrance is supposed to reference Centrepoint, the building next door, which is one of London's first skyscrapers. I always think I'd like to do a full video on Farringdon because it's one of my favourite stations. Farringdon is so long that you can actually get a tube train from one end to the other. At one end you have Farringdon Underground, and at the other you have Barbican. The Farringdon end is close to Hatton Garden. This is London's jewellery quarter, home to the city's goldsmiths and diamond geezers. This diamond pattern in the ceiling represents that, as does Simon Periton's artwork Avalanche. The Barbican Ticket Hall uses Portland stone paving, which is a material almost synonymous with the City of London. There's another Periton artwork here, Spectre, which draws inspiration from Smithfield Market's fancy ironwork. The concrete ceilings apparently echo the Barbican estate, but I must admit that I think this is one of those happy coincidences given how universal concrete is on the line. Liverpool Street has no architectural references to the local area, which, given what was here before the railway arrived, strikes me as a colossal failure of imagination. I like Whitechapel a lot, partly because it repurposes the old Whitechapel and Bow railway building, but there are plenty of other references to the area's history. These slats along the ceiling are patterned to resemble the sound wave from a bell. This references the Whitechapel Bell Foundry, which between 1570 and 2017 cast some of the most famous bells in the world, including both Big Ben and the Liberty Bell, although it doesn't say much for your quality control when two of your best-known bells are cracked. I don't know if these brassy panels are also a reference to the foundry, but it would be nice if they were. At platform level, Chantal Joffe's artwork, A Sunday Afternoon in Whitechapel, is a series of collages inspired by people in the local community. Speaking of the local community, Whitechapel is the only station to incorporate Bengali signs. This isn't a deliberate historical reference on TfL's part, as far as I'm aware, but I'd like to point out that Whitechapel Station has a long history of bilingual signs. In the early 20th century, it carried Yiddish signs for the benefit of the Jewish community. This isn't the only station on the line with bilingual signage. At Southall, the name is also rendered in Gurmukhi, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. I'll admit that Indian languages are not my forte. Canary Wharf is a place of steel and glass, and so too is the station, which is constructed inside an artificial island within the West India Dock. An artificial island in an artificial pool. How very postmodern. The station also has canary yellow accents on the escalators, and some of the panelling is a kind of visual pun. The name Canary Wharf comes from the fruit trade with the Canary Islands. So I guess you could also say that it's banana yellow, if you wanted. There are a number of tubs of plants outside which contain species from the many parts of the world ships used to sail to from here. The architecture of Custom House apparently reflects the geometry of the streets around it, which I think is a fancy way of saying we had to make it this shape to fit it into the space. Outside, there's a 2-kilometre long artwork by local artist Sonia Boyce based on accounts of the history of the area. This is the Newman Wall, and it's so huge that I'm really not doing it justice here. Maybe it should have a video of its own. Woolwich is a different station from Woolwich Arsenal, but the architecture makes several references to the Royal Arsenal, which was once the major industry in the area. The brickwork is intended to fit in with the historic buildings of the arsenal. Once again, there's bronze panelling. Bronze was the material favoured for naval cannons, which of course were cast here. The pattern in the panels at the entrance represents rifling, and the design in the glass represents the memorial coins made for the families of soldiers fallen in the First World War. These too were cast here. There are columns at platform level, patterned alternately in red and blue and red, blue and yellow. The red and blue is for the Royal Engineers, and the red, blue and yellow is for the Royal Artillery. I must admit that I'm not sure exactly how, because my understanding was that the artillery don't have regimental colours. If you know any more, please do let me know in the comments. I'm not very up on my military history, and this video in general is really exposing the depths of my ignorance on many subjects. Abbey Wood makes heavy use of wood, which represents the wood at Abbey Wood. Subtle. I rather like this organic form, and I think the timber gives it a unique and almost friendly look. It's certainly a contrast with the steel, glass and concrete seen elsewhere on the line. Well, that's it for now. Of course, there are many other artworks along the route. I've just stuck to the ones with local relevance. I might look into the other art in future, some of which hasn't yet been installed. And then there's the Newman Wall. That's got to be worth a closer look, hasn't it? Well, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please do click the like button, subscribe for more, and click the bell icon to be kept up to date with my future releases, which I promise will not just be about the Elizabeth line. Thanks as always to my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. You are the bronze to my pillars. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio.